Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Julie Henry. I heard her speak on another podcast, and when I found out that she studied zoology, I really wanted to have her as a guest. So she's worked at zoos and aquariums for years before embarking on a path as a speaker and author. Her topic of choice, leadership. So what do animals have to do with leadership? I have no clue. So hopefully she'll have some answers to that. So welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Julie.
Thanks for having me, Neil. Happy to be here.
So as I said in the intro that you studied zoology, what prompted you to study that?
My love of animals, if lost, please look outdoors. I dissected a shark actually when I was a junior in high school, and I just never looked back. It just took me down the animal road.
Okay. Was there any thought of becoming a veterinarian?
Yeah, absolutely. I really actually was fascinated by the eye of the shark. So I thought I wanted to be an ophthalmologist. And then I, did what every kid typically does, is that you volunteer or you intern. So I interned for an ophthalmologist and learned that I did not want to be an ophthalmologist or a doctor. It didn't ignite my creative soul. I had to find another way to stitch in my love of animals.
All right. So now you get a degree in zoology. What was next for you? How'd you use it?
Well, I then tried out aquaculture to see if I just love science, but I learned real quick that I was not good at being a scientist. I was much better at sharing my excitement about science to like your audiences, or like you're helping your audiences realize non-technical people. So I went and got another degree in education so I could understand how to teach different people, and then went on to do graduate work in communication, another degree in outdoor education, and then another one in business leadership so I could stitch it all together.
Good Lord, how many degrees do you have?
Two undergraduate and basically two graduate, and then an executive program certificate.
Well, damn, you must really like school.
And I kept going to really interesting places, right? Like Vermont and New Zealand. I'm like, if I can go to school there, I will go.
Nice. So I mentioned that you worked at zoos and aquariums. What kind of work did you do when you worked at these type of places?
I worked in the education division because I could work with all different audiences and I could work with all different scientists. So I saw myself as the conduit. We called it from K to gray. We had pre-K kids, and then we had lifelong learners, senior citizens that would come in and still want to learn.
Oh, wait. So I'm trying to remember going to SeaWorld. So are you one of those people that talks about Shamu the whale?
I would have been one of the people on the microphone, not necessarily somebody in the water with Shamu, but like when I worked with Busch Gardens, I got to stand on stage and talk about animals as my colleagues brought the animals in.
Oh, okay. That's a really cool job.
Maybe I saw you in the audience sometime.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So,
Yeah.
you didn't stick with that. I did mention that you became a speaker, or a leadership speaker. So, what was the motivation to make that transition?
Well, every place I worked, I was always saying an audience that we can't forget are the people who work in companies that want to do interesting retreats. Everybody's got to get better at their job and get better at what we call the, soft or essential skills like communication and conflict resolution and all those things. And they could go to a hotel and rent a room, or they could come to this zoo or an aquarium that I'm working at. And that's far more interesting. And then we could use animals as a way to teach them about leadership. And so that was really my hook. So for 10 years, every place I worked, I was always the squeaky wheel. Like, let me help with these companies. Let me help recruit them and let me help teach them. And then after a while, I decided to jump ship and do it the opposite way. So that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years.
Oh, that's wonderful. And the type of companies that you work with, is it industry agnostic, or do you have a certain type of industries you work with?
I'm going to borrow that phrase. I like industry agnostic. I look at it like I've got some companies and groups that are still in the science world, and conservation and sustainability, but I would say 85% of my work is with companies that are, sports related, commercial insurance, chambers of commerce, banks. I've got all manufacturing plants. I've been underground in a mine, working with people, 1,500 feet underground, and that I love it because it's always different.
So with the companies that you work with, what type of problems do you help them solve?
I help them solve the people problems. We spend a lot of time and money on the technical side, but if the people don't know how to work together, like everything stops. So communication strategies, teamwork strategies, how to deal with change, how to plan for change, and how to integrate more resilience, and not just self-care and not just mental health and psychological safety, but really what does it mean to manage your energy? Because that's super important. And as you try to, have a balance between work and life, it shows up in your work if you don't have any sort of resilience.
Absolutely. And I guess with your work with animals, how does that maybe inform the work that you do now?
It helps me get people interested. It helps me lead with something that's non-threatening. Chances are that most people don't know what a naked mole rat is. Or a sea cucumber, or they haven't thought about what spiders can help them teach about change. And so rather than trying to, if I was working with you, Neil, and I was trying to say, let me help you with conflict resolution, like you might be a little bit like, wait, you don't know my job. Like, how do I trust you? But if I start talking about like, let me explain to you why people are afraid of change. Like it's basil. Like if a spider walks across my floor, I love spiders, but even me, I'm going to go, that's how people jump with change. And so it helps you maybe let down your guard a little bit and trust me. And it's an easier way to talk about it.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, Julie, because I'm thinking when you get hired by these companies, it's the decision makers that decide to bring you in, but the people that perhaps that you work with, they didn't decide whether you came in or not, but yet now you're tasked with helping them, and who knows, maybe they didn't think they needed help in the first place. Has that ever been an issue that you've had, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I've been in that situation too. Like I've worked for a company, or if I've sat in a conference, like I don't want to hear this speaker. Why am I sitting in this chair? Like this person doesn't know what they're talking about. They don't know me. And so the way I deal with it is I deal with it as humans. Leadership is a human experience, and so I talk to them as I don't start with what they fear. I've got to talk about how to feel safe first. And so we talk about change. We talk about why it's important, why, it's the very constant in life, right? But I've got to get them to trust me first and get their interest and get them paying attention, off their phone, off the email in their mind. And then I can talk about things that make them feel uncomfortable, because that's always my goal, safe but uncomfortable, right? Because that's where the growth happens. But you're exactly right. Not everybody wants help. But it's my goal that's why the animals help too, because I've yet to meet a person that either doesn't have some sort of animal in their life or some sort of animal that they're like, that's fascinating, I wonder about that. So animals help.
Interesting. Wow. I mean, when it comes to also the work you do with companies, I mean, I assume that a lot of your work is from the stage. Is there any other, I guess, services that you offer companies as well?
Yeah, I do a lot of facilitation. And so I do that in big annual meetings or strategy meetings. And so ways where I can really help people push the boundaries on what's possible. And then from the stage, I'm also, I'm doing keynote speaking, but I'm also doing a lot of panel moderation or one-on-one interviews. And I really love that because, it's hard to tell your own story, and it's hard to communicate precisely to your audience. So if I can be that message and help, again, show that human side of leadership, that's really important to me, because we need good leaders, especially in technical fields where we don't often spend the time or money on leadership skills that we should. So if I can help there, I think that's really important.
A couple of years ago, or I guess a few years ago, before the pandemic, I was involved with organizing a panel, and there was a moderator, and initially there was supposed to be, I think, 4 people, excluding the moderator on the panel. So there was 4 people that would be answering questions that the moderator would be moderating, and then there was an opportunity to add a 5th person, and I figured this 5th person was someone that was from the press. So I'm in San Diego. She worked for the local paper, the San Diego Union Tribune, and I figured the people in the audience would really want to hear from this person. So I didn't advise, or I didn't tell the other people who were organizing that I was going to add this 5th person. So I asked this person whether they wanted to be on the panel, and they said yes. And when I told the others that this person was going to be on the panel, they were one of them was quite upset, because they thought that 5 people on a panel as opposed to 4 would be too many people on a panel, because she was of the opinion that everyone wouldn't have the opportunity to speak if there was 5 as opposed to 4. So when it comes to, I guess, when you're doing your panel moderation, do you think there's an optimal number of people to have on a panel?
That's a really good question. I'm sure you had a really interesting experience with that. Yeah, I really like 3 or 4 people on a panel, and I really like it if I can structure them physically on the stage so that there's no table in front of them and so they can interact with each other as much as with me. I call it the conversations over coffee or cocktails approach, depending on what time of day it is. Because that keeps the audience feeling like they're a part of the conversation, and it keeps the panelists, or it helps them play off each other. And so it's not just, one-on-one anymore. It's truly a panel discussion, which is what I think most things should be and what most audiences want.
Right. Do you ever come across an instance where perhaps you have a panelist who is doing the majority of the talking, and the other panelists can't really get a word in? And if so, how do you deal with those situations?
Well, that's all in the pre-work, because in the pre-work, when I've had individual meetings with all the panelists, I'll be really clear and say, hey, my job is to keep the conversation going, keep your point, your message across, keep going to the audience, and to keep the audiences engaged. So all due respect, if I feel like you're going too wrong, going too long, I'll jump in and I'll be really kind about it, but I'll say, hey, Neil, I really appreciate it. And we could talk for a really long time, but Sarah and Jamarcus over here, they really have a lot to say. So I want to let Sarah go next. And so whether or not the person is hopefully not offended in the moment, but I've warned them ahead of time that I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I could totally see how they might be offended in the moment. It's like, I wasn't done my point. Well, damn it, you were taking too long to get to your point. How about that?
Yeah.
So, I mentioned in the intro that you have a book, and it's called Wisdom from the Wild: The 9 Unbreakable Laws of Leadership from the Animal Kingdom. What was your motivation to write the book, and what do you hope people get from it?
Well, my motivation is when I was in college in 1996, I got an assignment for my senior year thesis from my professor, and it was, design a program to teach kids about coral reefs. And I thought, well, not every kid is going to want to learn about coral reefs, but if I relate coral reefs to a company and how they similarly work together and need different parts, et cetera, then I've broadened my audience and broadened my impact and brought more people into the science realm. So that's where it started. And then I've used animal analogies and examples and case studies for 25 years. And I finally got enough street cred and figured out what people can learn from and what they like. And so I finally just decided to put pen to paper, because I hope that people will get not just inspiration and motivation, but really practical tools, because I believe that leadership comes down to leading change. And I believe if you're not leading change, then you're not really leading, and it doesn't matter which industry you are in. But if we use something like the wild, it's accessible to everybody. Like, you're in San Diego, I'm in Florida, you could be in Tokyo, I could be in Oklahoma. We can still walk outside. You could live in an apartment, I could live on a farm. We can still walk outside and wonder about nature. And leadership is about wondering. There's no prescription, right? I can't tell you these are the exact steps you must take every time you make the decision. I can't tell you that. I can tell you guidelines. But just like when I walk outside nature, I can't tell you these are the 4 animals you will always see. I can tell you these are the 4 animals you'll probably see, but I can also tell you, you're going to wonder, I wonder what that's all about. And that's the same thing with leadership, right? Like, wonder what I should do next. Like, how should I make this decision in COVID? Because no one's actually led through COVID before. Oh my goodness, right? So that's what I hope. I hope people get practical tools with a dose of inspiration and motivation to help them, move forward and lead better, and learn more about the natural world too.
When it comes to leadership, do you think that people should have a leadership style, or should people lead the way others want to be led?
Oh, that's a really good question. I haven't been asked that before. Well, I always tell all the people that I work with that my job or my goal is to make them more of the leader that they already are. So whoever they are innately, I want to bring that more out. Now, they need to flex for different audiences, of course, but they have to be true to themselves, because if not, the people are going to start to feel it. So yeah, I would say there are cases, and certainly when I was managing and leading people, and I'm still a leader today, there are people that don't jive with my style, and that is okay. But I can't flex too much, because once I flex too far, then I've gone away from who I am, and that person's still unhappy. So I got to stay true to myself.
Indeed. I had a conversation with also a leadership expert, and we was talking. I was talking to him about the idea of cultural fit within organizations and how many organizations are starting to move away from the idea of cultural fit and move toward cultural add. So when I hear cultural add, I'm thinking, well, this person that's being brought in might be a bit different than the people who are already there. So this is an addition essentially to what's already there. But what I also think about is because they're different, maybe they want to be led differently. And in the event that that's the case, is it how difficult would it be to add that person if they want to be led differently, and if your style is different than theirs, and if their style is different than theirs, then how do you get that addition? What do you think?
Yeah, I really like the idea of cultural add because, and I think from my mind, what you're talking about is the systems, right? Like we can add different people into different organizations and different cultures, but if the system is not there to support them, like if they always feel like the outlier, they're not going to be successful. We've not set them up for success. So we have to be able to be open and consider new ways of doing things so that person has a chance to be successful. And that really means being open and vulnerable. And that's really hard. That's where you get to the idea of psychological safety in the workplace. But the more that we strive for that, the more that we can add people in who can and should be in those scenarios. And then we can really get back to the change that needs to be led.
Yeah, I mean, you have a leader and maybe they have this particular style and you have people under them that maybe don't jive with that style, but then you have these companies that say that we want all types of people, and if you get all types of people, you're going to get all types of people who prefer different things. And if that's the case, and you have somebody that's leading them that's kind of inflexible with the way that they lead them, it's kind of my way or the highway, then it's going to be very difficult to get that, I guess, that diversity that a lot of these organizations talk about.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. Being true to myself does not mean that I just stay one way, right? And I don't allow for the diversity around me too, because that's super important. I mean, that's again why nature, like I walk outside, it's like there are not all one type of trees here. There's multiple different types of trees and multiple different species of birds. That's how nature is able to withstand the forces and the pressures. And that's true in companies too. You get all one type of people. Well, now I can't just hire I know people like that too, right? I know people who are top leaders of organizations, CEOs, and they hire the COO who is exactly the same type of person as them. I'm like, well, that's super frustrating for all the people that work with you because now they don't have anybody else to go to. And so you've got to flex a little bit. So if you're aware of how you lead and can get people around you that lead differently, now you've created a system and a structure to support that.
Yeah, I think it starts with just being knowledgeable of what you are really. And because I think a lot of times you're just kind of operating in what you are, you're not really thinking about it too much. But then it's very easy then to hire people who are just like you because those type of people resonate with you. So, but then when you do that, then you get the same type of person in an organization, and then I think there's been all kinds of research that's shown that when you have different types of personalities and different types of leadership styles, perhaps then you get better outcomes from those companies as opposed to everybody kind of thinking the same.
Yeah, I agree with you. And my corollary point that I just have to say is like, if I could change one thing, if my legacy can be one thing in the world, it's that we need to get away from the assumptions on what a leader is, right? A leader is not always the outgoing person, the first to volunteer, the first person to have the idea. That's leadership style, but so is the person who's a process thinker, who needs some time to come to a decision, who's not going to be first to volunteer because they don't have that oomph yet, but that person's just as much a leader. And so we've got to allow for different types of leadership in that regard too.
Oh yeah. I mean, leadership can, I suppose can manifest itself in different ways, but ultimately it comes down to, are people willing to follow you? I mean, because if not, then you're just leading yourself, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's like, well, I'm really hard to lead. I have to learn about myself too.
100%. So, Julie, when I first started this podcast, and to this day, really, it's all about the public speaking journeys of people who have these technical backgrounds, and it all stemmed from my own failings and struggles giving presentations in front of others, especially senior management, many of whom weren't technical. And I eventually got the warning, or I guess the wake up call, that this is something that I need to get better at, because my first few presentations in front of them were terrible. I still remember them. I mean, I didn't think it was possible to sweat that profusely in front of people, but there I was doing exactly that. So I definitely saw the benefit of it. At what point did you see the benefit of getting better or just being adept at presenting or public speaking in general?
Yeah, I tell my kids, I don't care what you do in life, but you have to learn how to stand up in front of people and speak. Like it's just a way of the world. Yeah, I realized in college that I was a science kid at heart. But if I didn't learn how to speak in front of people, that I would always be giving away my voice and my opportunity to speak for myself, to make a difference, and to represent my work. And, honestly, I just became too passionate about what I loved that I had to go through the fear. I mean, if I were to show you my little preschool picture, it would be me without a smile. I'm an introvert at heart. I'm a shy kid by nature. I sit by, I don't talk to people on the plane, but I recognize real fast. And I've failed so many times, just like you. But I've learned that the audience is much more important. Understanding my audience is much more important than I realized when I was younger in my career. I definitely had a time I was working for a marine laboratory and I was asked to give a presentation. So I was giving a presentation on our research, and normally people are fascinated by it, but this audience was giving me no reaction. So rather than stopping and checking in with the audience, I just started talking more and talking faster and trying to keep up with my own brain because I was sweating profusely as well. And then at the end of the presentation, someone said to me, by the way, these are French speakers. They don't actually speak English first. So everything you said is hard for them to understand. I'm like, oh my gosh, it wasn't actually me. It was me, but it wasn't that I was a bad presenter. I missed a major point. And so the times that I've failed are the times that I've not done my due diligence, understanding my audience as much as I can.
Yeah, understanding that audience is so important. And what's so interesting is I doubt any of them. I mean, you heard from somebody else that their native language isn't English and they had difficulty understanding you. It wasn't them that actually said anything. So because a lot of times that's what happens, because you might look around and you see no one else is saying it, no one else is speaking up, so you don't want to be the person to speak up either. But then luckily you had that person who came forward and said it was because they were French speakers and not native English speakers. But if you hadn't known that, you wouldn't have heard it. You wouldn't have heard anything from any of the people. And oftentimes, quite often, that's exactly what happens. You don't actually get that kind of feedback from the audience that you weren't that good at conveying the information. And that was definitely what I came across when I first started giving presentations. And when you mentioned that you're the person on the plane that doesn't speak to people, I'm the same way. But at least in my case, it's because I fell asleep before the plane took off.
And that might be my case too. Sometimes.
Yeah. So when it comes to the presentations that you do you have a process for putting them together? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, I start with the experience. What do I want the audience to remember as far as how they felt when they walked away? As well as my next thought is, okay, well, how do I want them to take the information and apply it? Because it's not just, here's a bunch of cool things that I think are cool. It's got to be how they can apply it in their life. So what are they going to feel in the moment and walk away with feeling? And then what are they going to be able to walk away with? And then from there, then I kind of take the Mark Twain approach as far as my key stories. Mark Twain, they say that he just had all these stories and he just assimilate them based on the audience. So I always have an intro and an exit story. And that story's got to be really accessible to the audience. I can't stand up there and start talking about my experience living in New Zealand, because unless it's a New Zealand audience where I know ahead of time that everybody's lived in New Zealand, I'm going to make myself not accessible. And so I'll tell a story about, being the kid who was sweating profusely in college because my presentation didn't go well. Well, everybody can relate to that, basically. And so that's my structure: intro, outro, my stories associated, and then of course the 3 key points that I want them to walk or want to structure in there. And then I always try to start with loosening them up. I want them to laugh. I want them to sometimes laugh at my expense, but it's fun. It's got to be fun. Times I always am appreciative of the time that people spend in the room with me. So it's always about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you ever get nervous before giving a presentation? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
All the time, all the time. And I tell myself that I'm not there for everybody, but I'm there for somebody. There's somebody in the room or somebody across the Zoom screen that needs to hear what I have to say, or maybe just needs to feel how I want to make them feel, which is safe but uncomfortable. I want them to think about their own, professional growth. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is I just relax into the moment, and I realize that all of us have shared experience and expertise. And I don't, especially when it's a technical audience, like I don't have to know more than the people in the room. I just have to put my slant on it so that they can think about their slant. I want to invite them to be part of the presentation. I'm not just disseminating information.
Yeah, if you're going about a presentation that way, just to disseminate information, especially if you're talking to a non-technical audience, that's going to be real difficult for them to even engage with what you're saying, because they're not at the same level. So you're going to have to find some way to spice it up a little bit so that they even listen. And because you're competing with them looking at their phones or falling asleep or staring off into space.
Yeah.
So you definitely have to do something to kind of pique their interest.
Yeah, and I want to bring the energy. I want to bring the energy and the enthusiasm. I mean, that's why I lead with what I want them to feel. Like if they walk away feeling like, oh, I feel like energized now. Like that's just as important to me as that 3 key, content points that I want to communicate.
So for the people who are listening or watching this conversation, Julie, and they want to get better at giving presentations or public speaking in general, what would your number 1 tip be?
My number 1 tip is to practice your networking skills, because that allows you to practice thinking on your feet and communicating to different audiences. So whether that's going to your local chamber of commerce, your local college reunion, your local high school club, I mean, I don't care what it is, your kid's soccer game, your art club, your church, your synagogue, whatever it is, you've got to practice speaking in small bits to people you don't know very well. Because every time you do that, you get better at communicating your message, again, in short bits, and then listening to the person in front of you. That you will take into your presentation is going to help your comfort. It's going to help the client or whoever is booking you or asking you to speak, and then help you on the out end. If you feel like it didn't go very well, you're going to feel like, but remember, I was there for somebody, not for everybody. That's just like that person I met, last week at the bank polo match. That's the connection.
I think you're right about that, Julie. The idea that if you're adept at speaking in those short bursts off the cuff when you don't have any practice or I guess any, there's no notice, there's no preparation involved. if you're able to do that, then if you have time to actually put a presentation together, that should be easy at that point.
Yeah. And I just was listening to a speaker talk the other day about the first presentation she gave in the Bahamas to a client, 1,500 people in the room, the lights went out, the slides went out, the microphone went out. And so the people were still sitting in the room when she said, "Can you hear me?" They said, "Yeah." She said, "Do you want me to keep going?" They said, "Sure." So she gave the rest of her presentation in the dark. Okay. So in order to do that, you've got to be really good at thinking on your feet. It's not just about memorizing your presentation. You got to be really good about connecting with people now I can't even see. So, it's that networking piece.
Yeah. Connect with darkness. That's interesting. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being a guest, Julie. How can people get in touch with you?
The best way is I'm active on Instagram at Julie C. Henry. I'm also on LinkedIn at Julie C. Henry, or good old fashioned email is julie@juliechenry.com.
Well, at least you're consistent.
Well, it's the branding, right?
Absolutely. Well, this has been great. Thanks again for being here. And this marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson, founder of Teach the Geek, and you can learn more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Julie.
Absolutely.